My husband went missing 6 months ago, just went out to work one day and never came home. It was a horrible shock to the whole neighborhood because things like that just didn't happen in our little slice of white picket fence suburbia. The police launched an investigation and the neighborhood watch sent out search parties, but no one ever found any evidence to indicate what had happened to him. Our families were devastated. Recently, the missing posters have been taken down or papered over. The updates from the police became less frequent and dwindled away. I accepted that, hard as it was to admit. My Rick wasn't coming back, until he did. A week ago, I was in the back garden watering my petunias when I heard the garden gate creak open. I jerked my head in that direction and there he was, exactly the same as he was the day he disappeared. Same windswept blonde hair and bright blue eyes, same curl to his pink lips. I was in shock. Our families had mourned for him, and yet there he was, standing in our garden like he had just popped out for milk or something. When I asked where he had been, he said he didn't know. He couldn't remember anything about the last 6 months. All our family and friends are beside themselves with joy. They almost can't believe it. But that's just the thing, I don't believe it. Look, I understand how crazy this all sounds, I do. Our families would never believe me. And I can't go to the police unless I want to end up in a straitjacket. But I just know that the man sleeping next to me isn't my husband. I don't know what to do. I know I should be happy, but I'm not. I'm terrified. I don't know much about anything supernatural or paranormal. I don't even like watching horror movies, but something about this whole situation makes my skin crawl. Just let me explain why I'm so sure. Once I've done that, hopefully one of you will believe me, and you'll be able to tell me what to do. The morning after Rick came home, I made him a cup of tea. When I handed it to him, he gave me the brightest smile. Then he took a sugar cube from the dish on the table and dropped it into the cup. Our house was in chaos with his return, and I was still in shock, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But it's been replaying in my mind ever since. I know it doesn't sound very significant, but my husband never put sugar in his tea. He was always adamant that it ruined the taste. And he'd get so frustrated if I ever put sugar in his cup by accident. And yet, this man had sugar. Then one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to see Rick's face inches from mine, just looking at me with these blank eyes. I kinda gave this nervous laugh and asked baby, "What are you doing?" And he didn't answer. For like a solid 30 seconds. He just stared almost like he was looking right through me. Then he suddenly smiled and said, "Sorry, honey. Sometimes I just can't believe this is real." Then he just rolled over and went to sleep. I didn't get much sleep after that myself. Yesterday, about a week after he came home, the neighborhood threw a street party to celebrate his return. Everyone from our street and the streets on either side turned up to see him and tell him how happy they are that he's all right. When he wasn't standing with his arm around my waist, he was milling around chatting amicably to each and every one of our neighbors, even the little kids. Jackson, our next door neighbor Sally's toddler, wanted to play peekaboo, and Rick happily played along with a smile on his face. Now, my husband never did that. Rick always said he didn't like kids. That's why we never had any. And so he never wanted to play with any of the Woody the neighborhood children, especially not Jackson. Rick all but avoided him. Before he disappeared, I had started to suspect it was so I wouldn't see them together and notice the subtle but unmistakable similarities. The final nail in the coffin, proverbially speaking, was Sally. Just this morning, she came knocking on our door. Her excuse was the tray of brownies she carried, but I think she just wanted to push her way into our morning so that she could see for herself what the situation was. After she left, I called her a nosy busybody. Rick laughed, kissed my head, and agreed with me. That was when I knew for sure that it couldn't really be him. Rick always used to get so mad whenever I insulted Sally, like I didn't have any right to hate her even though she'd been fucking my husband for years. But today there was none of that. He didn't even try to defend her. I know what you must be thinking. If he was in an accident or something, he might have had some kind of traumatic brain injury that caused him to forget some things about his life, maybe even change his personality. And that's a valid, reasonable explanation. I have no doubt it's what the police would tell me if I reported all this. But you know why I'm dead certain that man isn't my husband? He doesn't have a scar. If he was really Rick, he'd have a scar on the side of his forehead shaped like the golf club I hit him with. But there's nothing. Not a mark. Honestly, I'm this close to going out tonight and digging up my petunias just to make sure he's still under there. I don't know what I'm sharing a bed with, but I know it's not my husband. So what the hell am I going to do? Hi everyone. I want to thank you all for your concern and support. Even though I'm not giving out my real name, I obviously took a huge risk by telling anyone this at all, and I'm so grateful you've all tried to be helpful. I'm so sorry for the delay in updating. I've had some things to figure out, so I'll start with what I know. My husband is dead. In the end, I decided not to dig up the petunias. It was a rash, unadvisable notion which I have since abandoned because I realized how much worse things could get if I was caught. I've been smart about the whole thing so far, and I'm not about to throw that all away. It's too big of a risk. I did, however, thoroughly examine the flowers and the earth around them for any sign of disturbance, but I found none. Of course, I found none. I don't know what I thought had happened. That my garden was some sort of pet cemetery and my husband had clawed his way back from the beyond. Even to me, of all people, that sounds crazy. No, my husband is dead. In my heart, I know that beyond any shadow of a doubt, which means that whoever is in my kitchen right now is a complete stranger. He looks and sounds exactly like Rick. His own parents don't even notice the difference, for heaven's sake, but he doesn't act like him at all, which tells me again that he is a stranger, that he never knew me before this, and he certainly never knew Rick. He doesn't enjoy the things Rick enjoyed. He doesn't say the sort of things Rick said. He doesn't complain, doesn't raise his voice, doesn't lie or gaslight or cheat. Frankly, he's a better husband than Rick ever was. Honestly, when I think about it like that, I'm almost tempted just to let it go. I tried to let it go, not to get caught up in worrying and just accept my new life for what it is. But I find myself unable to let it go because even though this man seems ordinary and kind and reasonable, there's one thing that scares me still. For someone to have so confidently taken Rick's place, they would somehow have to be sure themselves that the real Rick would not return to complicate their plans, however innocent or sinister those plans may be. Whoever this man is who is calling himself Rick, he must surely know that Rick is dead, and if he knows that, I would bet anything that he also knows how. I've gambled with my life and my freedom before, and I don't intend to do so again. A couple of you suggested that Rick might have had a twin that, for whatever reason, I never knew about, or perhaps a doppelganger who saw his chance at a more comfortable life and took it. Either of these seemed to me to be the closest to the realm of possibility, so they were the first theories I set out to confirm or disprove. A DNA test would surely be able to confirm whether this man is my husband's twin or someone completely unrelated. Of course, I was hardly going to tell him about it. At best, he would refuse, and at worst, well, I didn't want to find out. So about a week after my last post, I ordered 2 separate DNA tests designed for finding one's relatives and ancestors, and had them delivered whilst Rick was at work. Then, a few nights later, I waited until he was asleep. Actually asleep, not half asleep and staring, and I pulled out a few strands of his hair. Not enough that it would be noticeable in the morning, but sufficient amount to send away in a little tube to be analyzed. Much to my relief, he didn't wake up. I'm not sure how I would have explained it if he had. I sent the hair away to the DNA test companies, and they told me I'd have to wait a couple of weeks for the results. And in those couple of weeks, things have gotten stranger, shall we say. You see, I've noticed that Rick never seems to eat of his own accord. Like, he'll make dinner for us both, but that seems more to do with when I mention that I'm hungry than with Elrithan desire to eat. He doesn't snack between meals. He never goes for a glass of water. I don't even think he takes anything with him to work for lunch. There's something else too. Rick's beard trimmer is still in its box, exactly where he left it 6 months ago, covered in dust and quite obviously unused. And yet Rick has been home for nearly a month and his beard doesn't seem to be any longer, even though he used to trim it twice a week. On top of that, the staring has become a frequent occurrence, and not just in the middle of the night. I catch him watching me during the day too, always looking away or laughing it off whenever I notice him doing it. Anyway, I might as well tell you why I'm writing this now, because I can't make head nor tail of the situation anymore. The DNA tests came back in the mail this afternoon, before Rick came home from work. I opened them quickly, eager to see who was included in the list of relatives, whether there were any names I recognized. Either way, it would answer my question. Only I don't have an answer. All I have are more questions, because the first test came back as inconclusive, with a note from the company telling me I had to send them a viable hair sample in order for it to work. I didn't understand that. I'd cut the hair myself, after all. And what did they mean by viable? But it was the second test that concerned me the most, where there should have been information about demographic and regional origin. There was nothing, only a line of printed black letters spelling out the word unknown. Where there should have been a list of relatives and ancestors, there was no one. Not just no one related to Rick. No one. According to the DNA test, this man has no relatives, no family, no ancestors, no biological connections, near or distant. That should be impossible, right? How can a person exist without any kind of relation? And how can he come from nowhere? I'm typing this up on the computer in the study, with several tabs open on various Google searches as I try to figure out how this could be possible. The DNA test lies on the table behind me, taunting me with the evidence of everything I do not know. And then I hear it, clear as day, coming from the doorway behind me. Rebecca, if I didn't know better, I'd say my heart stopped. I would know that voice anywhere. I never heard him come in, never even heard the door open. Dimly, in the back of my mind, I recall that our door creaks every time it opens. How could I not have heard it? I turn over my shoulder towards not Rick, a false bright smile on my face. He is not smiling. His face is calm, but there's something hard about the line of his mouth that sets me on edge. What the hell is this? His voice is perfectly level, but something about it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There's an undertone to his voice that I haven't noticed before now, something low and subtly grating. Even the real Rick never sounded like that. He holds something up, one eyebrow arched. When I see what he's holding, my stomach plummets. The results of the DNA test. Granddad was the one who told us. He'd been out with Sally for one of their walks through the New Forest, supposed to be gone until late afternoon, but he came back early. Sally didn't. I was in the lounge when I heard the hammering on the front door. Loud, panicked. It was lunchtime and I was sat in front of the TV watching Netflix. I paused the show and went to answer it. It took me a moment to recognize Granddad. Normally he's this calm, gentle giant. He combs what's left of his gray hair neatly to one side, wears a suit, even around the house, tie and everything. But today he looked different. His blazer was draped over one arm and his shirt was unbuttoned at the top. His tie was skewed. Sweat patches formed dark circles around his armpits. It was his eyes I noticed first, though. They were wide with an expression I'd never seen before on my granddad's face. Fear and panic. "Where's your mom and dad?" "Quick, Jack." The smell of cherry bubble gum wafted from Granddad's mouth as he spoke. He was chewing a piece almost frantically, his mouth working a mile a minute. My granddad always chews that stuff he has as long as I've known him, and he always gave me and my sister pieces as a treat when Mum wasn't looking. The smell usually has positive connotations for me. Now though, like my granddad's rumpled suit and panicked eyes, it just felt wrong. All of it did. "What's the matter, Granddad?" "Where's Sally?" "She's gone." "Jack, Jesus Christ." Granddad paused and pulled in a shaky breath. Then he started sobbing. Never before in my life had I seen my granddad cry. I didn't know what to do. The sight felt totally unnatural to me. The thing is, Granddad's always been the fun one. The one we'd joke around and play games with, learning magic tricks, taking each other on in board games, playing dress up when we were little. Granddad is the kind of person who would tip us a wink even after we'd been told off by Mum or Dad, just to let us know he was still on our side. He's only lived with us for the past year, but he's been there my whole life. After Mum, Dad, and Sally, he's the person I love most in the world. Seeing him like this, his eyes red with tears and his gray hair disheveled, I felt dread in my stomach. It was worse than anything I'd ever felt before. "What happened, Granddad?" I said. "What is it?" "I swear I only left her for 2 minutes." Granddad's eyes were large and desperate. "I just went into the bushes for a pee and told her I'd be right back, but then she wasn't there. I looked all around and shouted and called her name. She's disappeared. It's like she's vanished off the face of the friggin' earth. I only thought of Sally's diary this morning. 3 days had passed. Sally still hadn't shown up, and things were getting desperate. The police and our entire village were in full search mode. Investigators had interviewed each of us separately and were now following up several lines of inquiry. No one told me anything, of course, but I learned a lot from listening at closed doors. Apparently a group of travelers had been seen staying in an area not far from the spot my granddad and Sally were walking, camping out illegally. I heard Dad tell my mum that the police were talking to each of them separately, seeing if they knew anything. And while that was going on, we had volunteers combing the area where Sally had gone missing. It was a big area. I overheard one of them say, "Not many roads. Plenty of room for a little girl to get lost. Sally's bedroom is separate to mine. and the police searched it the day she went missing. Took away her phone and a bunch of other stuff in clear plastic bags, just like they do on TV, but there was one hiding place I didn't think they'd know about. As I crept into Sally's room this morning, I kicked myself for not thinking of the diary sooner. The last few days had been such a nightmare. It hadn't even crossed my mind. A blur of tears, questions, and hours of fruitless searching among the bracken. I'd felt useless mainly. A spare part. Big brothers, especially ones who are quite a bit older, like me, are meant to protect. They're mean to watch out for their little sisters. What good was I if I couldn't even keep Sally safe? Then I remembered the diary. I'd stumbled across it months ago, completely by accident. Or rather, I'd stumbled across Sally hiding it. I'd gone into her room one morning to find her cupboard door open. Sally was hunched over in the corner, half visible among the clothes. It was only as I walked closer that I saw what she was doing, stashing a pink book beneath a loose floorboard. I'd crept quietly out without saying anything. I didn't want to startle her, and I'd guessed straight away what the book was. As a 15-year-old, I had no interest in reading my 8-year-old sister's diary, so I thought the best bet was just to stay quiet. Let her keep the secret to herself. Now, walking across Sally's room towards her cupboard, I had a weird mixture of fear and hope in my stomach. It was a long shot, I knew that. But maybe there was at least a chance I'd find something. Maybe I could help. I creaked the door open. Sally's cupboard was dark and messy. My shoes crunched across sweet wrappers on the floor. I pushed piles of clothes to one side. It didn't take me too long to find it. The floorboard in the far left corner had a hole in it clogged with paper. I pulled it out and worked my finger in. Then I lifted the board up. The pink book was the only thing in the space beneath, crouching down in the darkness. I opened it up, used the light on my phone as a torch. The latest entry was dated 3 days ago, the day Sally went missing. As I read the first line, I felt fear growing in my stomach like weeds. Dear Diary. The alien came to visit me again last night. I never told you about the alien before, even though I wanted to, because it made me promise. But now I think I have to tell. The alien is tall and it's got an ugly gray head and narrow black eyes. It visits me at least once a month. I wake up in the dark and it's in the corner of my room by the cupboard, watching me. It hardly ever speaks, but the one time it did, it told me I'd been chosen for an experiment, a special and secret experiment that I could never tell anyone about. Then I followed it through the cupboard door, and there was all this white light on the other side, so bright I couldn't see. And the next thing I knew, I was back in bed again, and the alien was gone. I couldn't remember anything. I'm scared to tell, but lately I keep forgetting stuff during the day, and my head feels funny, so now I think I have to. I don't think I can tell Mom or Dad about it, though they'll be cross with me for keeping the alien a secret so long. Sally X. I reread that page several times in the cupboard. The fear in my stomach had blossomed into a full-grown sense of dread. I kept thinking about how Sally had just disappeared there one minute, gone the next, like a hole had opened up in the sky and swallowed her. After a few more minutes, I got up to leave the cupboard. I kept the book in my hand. There were other entries that I still needed to read. And even then I knew I'd have to show it to someone. My parents or granddad maybe, or the police. As I went to leave the cupboard, my foot crunched down on another sweet wrapper. I paused. There was something in the back of my mind nagging me, a sense I'd missed something obvious. I looked down at my feet. And as I did, the whole nightmare puzzle suddenly began slotting into place. Images flew through my mind like a film reel unraveling. An image of the day I'd found out Sally was missing. An image of us playing dress up when we were younger. An image of a tall, shadowy creature standing in the corner of my sister's room. A creature that told her not to tell anyone about it, and that took her into the cupboard to do experiments on her. Experiments she couldn't remember. Mostly, though, I thought about the wrapper beneath my foot. The wrapper in my sister's cupboard, one of many that wasn't a sweet wrapper after all. It was a bubble gum wrapper, cherry flavored. The puzzle finished forming in my mind. I felt sick. There was no alien. There never had been any alien. It was Granddad. When I was young, we lived in a bad neighborhood. Our street was in an isolated part of the city, cheap and dirty, filled with strange and lonely neighbors. One of them was Mrs. Yaga. She was an old lady who lived in the second floor of an old apartment building. Her curtains were always drawn. Across her window was a dark corner of the streets, where street lights did not reach. Every night I would see her silhouette in front of the window, looking into the dark corner. At dusk, I would play out in the streets with my friend Tommy. We would hang out on the streets in front of my house. One day after sunset, Tommy approached me. I was sitting on the stairs of my building, chewing on an apple. He seemed worried. I threw my ball over there. He pointed to the dark corner of the street. "Can you come with me?" It wasn't that dark. The corner was just a small distance away. "Why do you need me?" He looked fidgety. "If I go alone, Mrs. Baba will get me." I looked up to her window. The silhouette of a figure on a rocking chair was there, staring into the corner. The old lady. He spoke back in a whisper. "She kills children." I must have looked at him in a strange way cause he started to stutter. "You can ask your parents, or any of the kids. Everyone knows. She killed her own brother when she was 10. Anyone who goes into the dark corner alone will see her standing in the dark. She'll grab you." Tommy looked scared. I looked at him like a younger brother. I couldn't leave him alone. "Well, come on then." I got off the steps and started to walk alongside him. We crossed the road and headed near the street corner. I stopped in front of Mrs. Yaga's house. The curtains were still closed. "Where is it?" He was scanning the pavement. "It was supposed to be right here. Did someone move it?" "It's over there in the shadow." I walked a bit closer. "Where did you hear that?" The curtains were pulled apart. She was standing up, staring at me with the most unnerving expression, like she was waiting for something. "Come on." Tommy reached for me. As I watched, her mouth opened in an almost inhuman stretch and let loose a shriek. It was the most horrible screaming I ever heard. She banged on the window, the glass almost cracking. I grabbed Tommy's hand. He tried to tug me back, but I pulled him along. We ran away. I heard her screaming all along the street, following us. Even as I got to my room, I heard her outside my bedroom window. She wailed for hours. That night, I stayed up late. I thought about the way she banged on glass, like she was trying to get out. Late into the night, I heard the sound of glass shattering outside. It was coming down the street. All I could think about was her breaking through the window and crawling out, now wandering the dark, looking for me. I pulled the blankets over my head, but I heard nothing for the rest of the night. The next day, I arrived on the streets an hour before dusk. The lights on the second floor were off, but I could see it clearly. The second-story window was cracked open. I didn't want to stand there anymore, not in view of the window. I ran off before Tommy showed up. When I got home, my parents were talking in the kitchen. They were speaking in hushed tones. I heard her name. In the night, an intruder broke into Mrs. Yaga's house. They slit her throat. I had to know the truth. I told them about the stories I heard about her. I asked if any of it was true. I learned the real story that night. Ever so often, children disappeared in that dark corner. The only witness was the old woman. Every time, the old woman repeated the same story. When she was young, her brother used to play on the streets. He made friends with a young boy. The boy's name was Tommy. One day, her brother disappeared. She said it was Tommy, the young boy, led her brother into the dark corner of the street. But Tommy wasn't real. Ever since that day, whenever children go missing, she talked about Tommy. She says the boy led children into the dark corner. She screamed at children to warn them. Dad told me Tommy wasn't real. He's wrong. Every night, just after sunset, I see him outside my window. He's waiting for me to come down and play. My sister is missing and has been missing for a month and a half. No one believes me, but I know my sister better than anyone else. Natalia would always crack a joke about how if she would go missing, no one would ever know. It pertains to how she never calls or texts daily. She lets you know about random mundane events weekly instead, bi-weekly if you aren't in her close social circle. It sounds like a dark joke to make, but Natalia always listens to true crime. She always told me that people always notice when their loved one is missing within hours or overnight. Natalia has never been much of a communicator, texter, caller. She doesn't like superficial conversations, so she only messages when she has something to say. When the conversation has run its course, you won't hear from her unless she has something else pressing on her mind. She's always said no one would know if she's gone missing. She would simply be gone. And those first 48 hours would slip through everyone's fingers because of her lack of communication. It used to be funny, but now it came true. I thought people would notice that Natalia's texts didn't quite sound like Natalia. Or maybe they'd notice, instead of all lowercase, she suddenly started using proper capitalization. Or they'd notice that she wouldn't use our nicknames. Natalia talks to me the most, so maybe it makes sense that I'm the only one who notices the minor details. I tried showing my mom, but she'd only reply in a bitter tone about how Natalia doesn't talk to her consistently. Offhandedly, I remind her she doesn't reply consistently to anyone, leading my mom to reply about how she's her mother, so she should talk to her every day, and abruptly hang up. I tried my dad next. Natalia has always liked my dad more than my mom, but she liked him more because he respects her space. He respects that she's busy, and she respects that he's busy. Even with a new wife and kids, he never treated us differently, so I had higher hopes that he'd understand. He didn't. He told me that my mom must have gotten into my head, but when I showed him the conversation, he said it was a little odd that she was texting out of character, but a text is still a text. So, it's only me who notices. I've been thinking about my first move of asking my mom and dad for their input. They live in different states than us. Natalia lives an hour away from me. What would they do from where they were? I drove the hour out to her apartment in a cute area of our city. Natalia gave me a spare key, so I could easily enter without trespassing in the event she didn't answer the door. I hated sounding so negative during that drive, but if I believed she went missing, I needed to be prepared to do a wellness check. I know you might think, isn't that what the police are for? The police told me she may run away if she wants, and she's still answering text messages. They ignored the stark difference. They ignored everything I had to say. I'm stuck doing everything on my own. Getting to her apartment is nerve-wracking, hands sweaty, constantly rubbing my palms against my jeans. I felt lightheaded. I remember feeling as if I was going to faint if I saw something unsightly. I felt my heart thudding in my brain, loud and echoing through my ears as shallow breaths left my mouth. Hands shaking as I turned the key, and with one last thick swallow, I opened the apartment door. It's hot inside the apartment. Natalia kept her air conditioning off during the day to save money for her bill, but it's never been hot enough to rival the temperature outside. I knew she hasn't been here in a while, but all of her belongings are still in the apartment. As I walked in, I noticed her phone charger plugged in by the blender on her kitchen counter. The fruit started to ruin in the bowl she kept on the bar, dishes left in the sink's rack, and I noticed she had events written on her calendar that she marked as things she would risk. I knew Natalia didn't run away. She had plans for the future she was going to go to. Everything else is seemingly untouched, clean, with a small layer of dust against the surfaces. I walked further into the apartment, into her bedroom. All of her clothes were still there. If an outfit was missing, I didn't know which one, but nothing was empty enough to say she packed and ran off. Even her luggage was still there, in her closet. Empty. Her social security card and passport are in her nightstand drawer, just on top of her birth certificate. I called the police, and finally I could fill out a report. I guess seeing no sign of a runaway besides a purse and car being gone is sufficient evidence to at least look into the case. They relieved me as the police questioned me formally. I showed them all the evidence and explained her daily schedule so I can explain why her purse and car are gone. They seemed to take me seriously, and I thought I could start plastering her face all over the city in flyers or even talk to local media. But again, I was proven wrong. Social media isn't lying when they say the police are a joke. Natalia didn't lie either when she talked about her true crime cases. They promised to look into it, gave me a case number and a phone number to call back on. I didn't hear any updates for 3 days, so when I called and asked, they told me they hadn't even looked, even though by this time she's been missing for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I'm still getting texts from the imposter holding Natalia's phone who uses proper capitalization and grammar. I check her apartment every day and watch the fruit ruin in the bowl. I searched our conversations for Natalia bitching about horrible police work. I remember she told me a family had to outsource someone or something else to help with their missing or murder cases. That's when I found a private investigator. My private investigator, Daniel Montgomery, proved to be way more useful than the police. Daniel started everywhere, leaving me to do the awareness work. The media wouldn't see me, however, since the police classified her as an adult runaway, even though there's enough circumstantial evidence to suggest otherwise. My mom and dad took the police's side, saying she ran away since they still get the weekly text messages that comprise small talk, and wishing them well. Both of them forget Natalia doesn't do small talk. I put flyers up anywhere I could until Daniel got back to me a week later. Natalia works at a customer service call center for a cell phone company. Her place of employment is nice enough to talk to Daniel. They were wondering when Natalia was coming back to work. They had called her for a week, But after her third no-call, no-show, they considered her unemployed. Her boss found it weird since Natalia has never been late, and when she was pulled over on the side of the road with a cop checking her license and registration. She had a ticket to prove her whereabouts 30 minutes into her shift. Her boss told the PI that she completed her last shift 3 weeks ago. She clocked out at 8:00 p.m. The next morning, her car wasn't in the lot. The PI asked if calls at the call center were recorded. And fortunately, the company was quick in getting the permissions and extracted all the calls from Natalia's landline for Daniel to comb through. The calls weren't interesting. Her customer service voice made me cringe as Daniel showed me a few normal calls, but tears welled in my eyes. I haven't heard her voice in 3 weeks. It felt nice to know that it was Natalia instead of the dry texts that go unanswered on my phone. Daniel paused before the last one he showed me, reminding me he was showing me what a normal call looked like versus the call he was about to show me. Machine, thank you for calling Cellular X. All calls are monitored and recorded for training purposes. By staying on the line, you are consenting to be recorded. An agent will be with you shortly. Natalia. Hello, I'm Natalia, and thank you for calling Cellular X. Can I get your account number to get started? Mail 325698874. Natalia, typing thank you. Give me just a moment to load your account. Silence. Natalia, can you confirm your name for security purposes? Mail, Justin Ackerman. Natalia. And the numbers on your address. Mail, 426. Natalia, thank you so much. How can I help you today? Mail, that's a brilliant question. How can you help me, Natalia? Natalia, well, I can absolve bill issues, change of address, service issues or a pull down, login issues such as report an error message or forgotten password, tracking a phone, ending an account, and more. Is there a specific reason you called? Mail, I called to speak to you. I kept getting other agents on the line, but finally I got to you. Natalia, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm confused. If this call isn't to service your account on Cellular X, then unfortunately I'm not able to help you. Mail, you never want to talk to me. You never reply. You never look my way, and I can't handle it anymore. How is someone who's always on their phone never texting? Don't you know how to text back? Natalia, you text back your sister. What's her name again, Marissa? Natalia. Whispering, how do you know Marissa? Who is this? Mail, don't interrupt. It's rude to interrupt a customer. I'm Justin Ackerman, remember? Account 325698874 with address numbers 426. We should be closer. I'm in love with you and you haven't answered a text from me in months. I text you every day, but I remember the day you blocked me or changed numbers because the blue bubbles turned green. Natalia, whispering, I changed numbers. Is this? Mail, it is Justin Ackerman. You already know that, silly. Go on and end your call professionally. Would hate for you to get in trouble on your last day. Natalia, last day. Mail. End the call. Natalia, thank you for your call to Cellular X. If you stay, I'm on the line. There will be a survey that takes roughly 2 minutes to complete your service today. Thank you. Call ended. As you can guess, that wasn't the real Justin Ackerman. They found the real Justin Ackerman dead in the bathtub of his house. He was left to rot there for 2 months, but no one suspected a thing because he texted. Whoever this creep is, who stalked Natalia, is unknown. The police still think she's a runaway despite the obvious threat in the phone call. Despite Justin Ackerman showing up dead under the same circumstances, they think maybe she ran away after being threatened or something like that. The PI couldn't get the phone records from Cellular X since they held those under federal grounds, needing a federal subpoena. There's only so much Daniel could do, but it meant the world that he even tried. I had nothing in our conversations about a creep who texted her. I'm glad I delete nothing. I have texts from Natalia dating back to 3 years ago when I got this phone. The only thing I have is a list of guys she went on dates with. It's not great, but it's a start at least. I narrowed the list with Daniel to only the guys she saw before she got her number changed. Natalia only met guys on dating apps and gave them her phone number if she got proof they weren't catfishing weirdos like a video on Snapchat or something. The list is small. Giovanni, Jason, Bryce, and Johnny. Only 4 guys in 2 years and 3 months. She didn't seriously date any of them, but I still could get their last names from conversations. Natalia always gave the last name before a date. Daniel went to talk to them, but nothing came of it. I'm not shocked. Natalia didn't say they were weird. I kept reading, searching, until a text came from Natalia's phone. I called Daniel immediately before I answered, waiting for him to come over. We answered them together to ensure I said the right things to extract information. Natalia's phone. I heard you're looking for me. M.E. You haven't been at your apartment for over a month. Natalia's phone. What if I went on vacation, met a boyfriend, and took a trip? What if I went to visit family? What if I went backpacking across Europe? Or what if I just ran away? M.E., I'd still find you. I know this isn't Natalia. You can stop pretending to be my sister. Natalia's phone. This is your sister, M.E. I know you killed Justin Ackerman because he had a Cellurex account. Were you some rejected loser she didn't even tell me she went on a date with? Natalia's phone. I don't know what you're talking about, Marissa. I'm your sister. Besides, I don't tell you everything about my private life. M.E., stop pretending to be Natalia. I heard the phone call. I heard you tell her it's her last day. And I heard you admit to stalking her. Natalia's phone. Scary phone call, wasn't it? It's why I ran off. And it's why I'm texting you now. Stop looking for me, or I'll come to find you. I didn't show it to the police. If I showed it, they would think Natalia ran away, and they were just now looking into her bank accounts. They haven't been touched for a month and a half. Natalia is still missing. I guess she was right. I guess no one really would know if she was missing. No one besides Daniel the P.I. believes me that she's missing. Mom and Dad have their head in the ground. Living off those texts is a sign that she's alive. Her apartment gets cleared out next week. Flies swarm around the apples and bananas in the fruit bowl on her counter. I think I know who it is after reading enough into our texts. A guy that approached Natalia in a club. Henry, she told me he was clingy just before her number got changed. Daniel is looking into it now, but I'm not sharing this for awareness. What is a bunch of strangers going to do on the internet besides keep their eyes peeled for the news story that's never to come? I'm sharing this because this past week I'm getting texts from an unknown number of locations I've been to this week. Nothing else. Just shops, my job, restaurants. Sometimes the text will say Daniel and I went to this place, or what I wore. I'm being stalked now. I tried telling the police, but they told me there's no funding to have a watch at my house. I got a text before I sat down here and wrote this all up. He told me I look cute in my pajamas, sitting on my couch, watching Natalia's favorite movie. I'm sharing this with you because if I go missing, I want someone to know.